Talking about religion, just momentarily, let's digress. Let's turn to the role of the church just for a minute, the role of the church in race relations. Billy Graham was quoted by Life magazine in October of 1956, Mr. Marshall, is saying, most ministers agree that race relations are worse now than 2 years ago. With an uneasy conscience, most of them confess that the church is doing far too little about it. Do you agree that this is so?
I agree that the church is doing not enough. And one very good Negro churchman, Dr. Benjamin Mays of Atlanta, Georgia, said at one World Church meeting that the biggest segregation problem in the South occurred on Sunday in the churches.
Was this a white minister? Or?
No, this was a Negro. And that's been repeated.
Which denominations are most lax in this respect, in promoting segregation?
Well, I would say that on, well, let's take the other side. The Catholic Church has done a terrific job. Not perfect, but a terrific job in the South in desegregating its parochial schools even before the decisions, and in desegregating its churches. It's not complete, but it's a well-done job. On the other hand, the Baptists, the Southern Baptists, have adopted a resolution supporting the Supreme Court decision. I think the Methodists have, but I see no implementation on the lower level. On the individual pastors level on the Protestant church, there are several who have spoken out and indeed lost their pulpits. And don't ever forget one of the brightest spots of the Clinton, Tennessee situation, which was a horrible one, was when the Protestant minister, Reverend Taylor, who I believe was a Baptist, took it upon himself to carry those children into the school, and as a result was beaten up.
But you still feel that by and large the church is not doing enough about it?
I don't think they are on the local level, and I believe that if the churches on the local level would take a firm position, that would be a 10 strike on getting this thing through.
All right, now let's go back to NAACP. In the current issue of Ebony magazine, Georgia Senator Herman Talmadge says as follows: in the matter of free speech, the NAACP follows the communist line of cursing, belittling, smearing, and maligning anyone who dares oppose it. The NAACP leaders and their fellow travelers are the most professional race baiters in the world today. The NAACP is subversive, he goes on, since it seeks to undermine our traditional constitutional freedoms and to impose race mixing on millions of white and colored people who do not want it. Now then, to get back to what I was talking about a little bit earlier, and that's the number of Negroes who join NAACP, do you agree with Talmadge in any sense that there are millions of colored people who just do not want race mixing?
As a matter of fact, Senator Talmadge knows as little about Negroes as anybody else in the country, and I don't see how he could ever know anything about Negroes when the only ones he knows anything about would be his chauffeur and his butler, if he has Negroes there. He does not meet with them, he doesn't allow them any place, and certainly he can't speak for the Negroes. He's also said that 90-odd% of the white and Negro people in Georgia are in favor of segregation. Well, if that's true, why does he fight so hard to keep the laws on the books? If they're all in favor of segregation, they wouldn't need those state laws. The truth of the matter is that when Governor Talmadge, now Senator Talmadge, says that we call people names, he obviously knows that's not true, because I have a bushel basket we could use if we were in that business. I think that the American people know better than to expect that Governor Talmadge can speak for the Negroes of Georgia. And I would, as a matter of fact, I'd be willing to pay a considerable amount of money for every Negro vote he's ever gotten in his life. I doubt he's ever gotten one in Georgia.
Well,
outside of his butler.
That outside of his butler, and you think he's gotten his butler's vote?
That's right. I forgot there's a secret ballot. I couldn't even be sure of that.
You still, in a sense, have not answered my question. Do Negroes, the large majority of them, want mixing of the races? When the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and advancement, I gather, means mixing of the races,
No.
integration of the races.
Well, bear in mind that the NAACP is not for mixing. Our particular job is to take the laws off the books that prevent people from by their own selection, deciding who they'll associate with. It could very well be that they wouldn't. There's no instance that you'll find in any of these cases where we ask that somebody be forced to do something. We're trying to get to the position where the people can sit down and work it out themselves. I don't believe I have a right, for example, to go in anybody else's home that doesn't want me, but at the same time, I don't want any law to say I can't do that.
One last charge from Talmadge. Same article, Ebony Magazine. The NAACP has frequently shown complete disregard for the principles of an organized free society. Specific charge, it has assisted scores of convicted criminals who have escaped southern work camps to northern states. Using political pressure, NAACP lawyers have often succeeded in preventing these criminals from being returned to the states from which they escaped.
He's absolutely wrong, and as a matter of fact, he's protected criminals in his own state from being extradited to New York.
Mr. Marshall, can you sit down across a table with a white southerner and discuss issues without passion?
I do it every day when I'm in the South, and I spend 2/3 of my time down South. There's not a trip I make in the South that I don't sit down with responsible white citizens of 1, 2, 3, or more. And we sit down around the table and give and take. I'm recognizing their problems, and they're trying to recognize mine. And
Are they really trying to recognize it?
Yes, it's the large majority of the Southern white people are recognize they have a difficult problem, and they're trying to work it out. And wherever they want to, we help them to work it out.
What about the renaissance of the Ku Klux Klan? How many Klan members, do you have any idea how many Klan members there are throughout the South today?
No, I don't. The number would be increasing. Around Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for example, there are some 5,000 that are ready to do whatever's necessary to be done.
Violence if necessary.
Violence if necessary. They now say they're not really against integration. They are from keeping the Negro from voting. They want to push the clock back to the beginning of the century.
Would you say that 100,000 Southerners as members of the Klan would be an exaggerated
No, that
figure?
would be too large.
That would be too large?
That would be too large.
Talking about violence, I'd like to know how you believe a Negro should conduct himself in the face of violent prejudice. Reverend Martin Luther King urges national passive resistance. And according to the New York Times on March 3rd, Negro churches show old movies of Gandhi to demonstrate how real victory comes from nonviolence in the South. And they urge their congregations not to strike back when a white man spits in their face or hurls dynamite at their homes. Now, first of all, I don't know that you've ever been faced with this. Are you a nonviolent person? Do you subscribe to that?
I subscribe to nonviolence, but I'm not a pacifist. I'm no more of a pacifist than our forefathers were in the Revolutionary War or that in the last war.
Have you ever been confronted with violence or something? Have you ever been spat upon? Have you ever been attacked personally?
Well, I have been, mob had me in Columbia, Tennessee one time, and there have been remarks passed, and a couple of times I've managed to get away.
How have you conducted yourself? Again, passive
Well,
resistance?
in the Columbia, Tennessee thing, I remember distinctly that I sat in the back of the car being carried down to the river bottoms for whatever action they were going to have, and I remembered that I whistled, but I never remembered what I whistled. I'm sure I was not too satisfied about it. But I think the whole theory of passive resistance is something that cannot be swallowed as a panacea for the whole problem, no more so than I believe that lawsuits are the panacea for all of it. I think that the solution is a working out of the problem with lawsuits as the bitter end if necessary.
Well, then you say it cannot be considered a panacea for the whole... Do you recommend to the Negro in the South that he keep his silence or that he fight back, that he meet fire with fire?
I believe that he should meet fire with whatever legal method he can use. Nonviolent. I don't believe anything can be settled by a race riot. I don't think anything has been settled by any race riots. But the South considers a lawsuit as being violent. Well, if that's violent, yes, I'm for it. But I'm not for not protecting myself. I am for protecting myself at all costs. If somebody comes to my house to throw dynamite at it, I'm not going to sit there and let them throw it if I can help it.
Do you think that President Eisenhower, Mr. Marshall, has done all that he can thus far to further the cause of integration? And what I mean is in practice as well as in speech, as well as in trying to create a restrained but favorable national attitude.
Well, I do not think that President Eisenhower has done anywhere near what he could have done. I wonder whether it's too late. Personally, I don't think it's too late. But I think the president should have shortly after the decisions, or at least by now, have gotten on a television network or radio and spoken as the chief executive of this government to the good people of the South, urging them to support the decision of the Supreme Court as the law of the land, whether they believed in it or not, and to use the full influence of his position as president to bring about peaceful solution of this problem. I think he was obliged to do that, and I think that his failure to do so does not help us at all, especially when we realize that as a result of the failure of the good forces to take over, we have allowed these other forces like the White Citizens Councils and the Klan to threaten and intimidate good people. Moral leadership should come from the top executive of the government. It's his responsibility, and he can't duck it.
How, at the time that he took his stand, and how now do you regard Adam Powell's stand in favor of President Eisenhower in the last election?
Well, I do not have a category for that at all. I think that, after all, Adam Powell is a politician, and why he decided, I don't know. But
were you sympathetic with him? Did you vote for Eisenhower?
Did I vote for Eisenhower? Fortunately, I don't have to answer that. And I'm one of those old school people that believe the secret ballot is secret.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm not... what I'm after is this.
Frankly, that's the only reason. I do say that...
Were you sympathetic with Powell?
Not with Powell as such. I was anti the Democratic Party. I was anti everything that the Democratic Party stood for as exemplified by Senator Eastland, Senator Talmadge, etc.
Were you pro-Eisenhower?
No, I was anti-Southern Democrat. I know that sounds, but I think it's very important to keep my position clear on that. That when the Democratic Convention failed to do anything about the Southerners, they lost my support.
As far as you're concerned, it's been a plague on both your houses, both your parties, as far as an attitude toward race relations has been
concerned.
That
in Congress today, the only bipartisan action is against civil rights and Negroes' rights.
Final question, Thurgood Marshall.
And I'm opposed to a third party.
Well, if you can figure your way out of that maze, I'd be interested to know what it is. Final question.
And I can't be any more forthright than that, because that's the honest to goodness truth.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
A friend once called Thurgood Marshall a tea kettle about to explode, but as we have seen tonight, he appears also to have qualities of humor and patience and quiet dispassion. Underneath, there exists no doubt the tea kettle, that spirit of strong conviction that America cannot live with a free conscience until all of the people enjoy all of the fruits of America equally under the eyes of the law. I'll be back with Gene Dalrymple in just a couple of minutes.
And there's a hard drive to the job. And Blue Bomber's block is knocked off.
The one reason I started TVDAYS.com was to have a place to post my videos and the films that I've been restoring.
Stomach's jumping, and I'll feel worse tomorrow.
Ideals Robot Commando.
I'm a very lucky girl. I've got a Tootsie Roll Pop.
This is some of the rarest one-of-a-kind material in the country. Unless my collection is saved, preserved, and put somewhere else, no one is going to see this again.
You'll love Tootsie Roll Pops.
Real one? No, I don't. This is terrible. The one we want is Caught in the Middle.
Hey, cuz, you all rat tail sharp. How about giving us a few of them pennies?
One amazing find was Caught in the Middle, a color kinescope that was made by CBS in 1970. And as I'm watching it, there's Morgan Freeman.
I got things breaking for me. Pretty soon I'll be able to throw some pennies your way. Nice pennies.
Once it aired, it was never seen again, and nobody has a copy anymore, and I was able somehow to get one. But just transferring it and fixing the audio is one thing. I have to put touches up to a lot of the video, so when I'm playing it here, you can see how dark it is in spots. I have to then lighten it up, and now it's starting to look like something.
And the man's just waiting to blow you away. And if he ever gets the chance, bye-bye, black boy.
There's so much history there that needs to be documented correctly. And hopefully, if I can bring it to the public, that will happen.
Is this box number 20 or number 20?
This is ridiculous.
I see it number
This all has to be taken out. More 16 millimeter. This is 45 years of collecting. And now I have to figure out how to finance saving it all. That's the big question. Because there's a lot of rare, one-of-a-kind items that need to be saved. Musty smell. So the key is to transfer it all now digitally, then store it all away. And my goal one day is to walk into a building and there is everything I have in little plastic containers on a wall, organized.
George, stop the machine. Stop the machine.
This film's so old it just breaks up in your fingers.
Can't you patch it together again?
Not a chance. Celluloid's only good for 20 years or so, and then it gets so brittle you can't hardly touch it.
You mean that we can't even see it? Now that we have it?
There's just nothing you can do about it.
Nothing you can do about it. Never had the world known a more wonderful way of recording knowledge. But now it was realized that it wasn't permanent, that half a century of history was about to decay out of existence.